Boom, and we're live. And well, this is a podcast that we were just we were just chatting before we went live. This has been a long time in coming. So I kind of really just want to go straight into it. And I know we just spoke before we went live, Jo. But how are you tonight, anyway, Jo?
I'm good tonight. Yeah, I'm really good. Yeah, chilling out.
Well, I mean, just to sort of give you anyone maybe listen to this, in the future or whatever, but our paths crossed at one fine night in Glasgow. I mean, for a start, I mean, this even goes on a whole tangent because I've been a huge Sean Smith fan for many years, right back to really way back in back in Seattle days when he started the grunge scene. Before that, and I've been kind of wanting to see the guy for about nearly 20 odd years. So when I finally kind of thought, wow, he's in Glasgow, I'm going to go along, and it was exactly as expected. I didn't expect many people to go along because even in the world of musicians, not many musicians know about Sean Smith. I think he's one of those guys that he's an underrated, unsung hero that many musicians who know because he's done a load of projects. But you'd ask many people generally, they go, who's Sean Smith? They think he's some guy on X Factor or something. You know what I mean? But anyway, we were at that gig, and like I say, I managed to catch the end of your set. And it was just there when I passed across it. I remember going at the end of the night, and there you were, stood by the little merch doing the bit that every artist has to do, stand there and do your bit. And that's when I bought this fantastic album. And I played it non-stop, and there was a lot of stories I want to go into with that and stuff. But that's where I passed across. So my question to you is, Jo, I mean, had you known about Sean Smith before you got to play with him, and how did you get to play live set with Sean? How did that come around?
Well, I didn't actually know much about Sean. I had heard of him before, back in Cardiff. I'd heard about a gig that he was playing there, but it was through a mutual friend that just loved Sean Smith, and he saw that Sean was looking for some support acts, and just said, "Oh, you should go and contact him," and that's basically how it happened. And obviously by that point I'd listened to quite a bit of his music. I was like, yep, this is definitely for me. I want to support Sean.
Nice. So I mean, did you get to, I mean, how did that actually, I mean, I'm always fascinated with this because how did you actually, you mentioned then you obviously had contacts between who you were and and the people, sort of reaching out to Sean Smith, but was that a case of just an email or and did you get to sort of actually meet him beforehand? And because I got to meet him briefly afterwards, but I never like bothering musicians after gigs because I think it's their own special time. And
I know what you mean.
So I kind of briefly sort of just sort of said just patted him on the shoulder and said, great gig, but I didn't but did you get to sort of see him beforehand? And he strikes me as he is what he is as he is a person. He doesn't seem to strike me as a person that's got an on-screen manner, then off-screen is someone else, or off behind the stage is someone else. So again, so how did you actually sort of the process of doing that? Because I mentioned it because obviously I've spoken to a lot of bands and musicians, and they're always speaking to me about the process of trying to get gigs and stuff like that. And I'm always I think it's good to people who have done stuff like you've done, how give people hints and advice along the way, because I know there's many musicians are wanting to know how to do this.
Cool. Well, that particular one was an unusual one in the sense that it was done that the artist was asking for supports and recommendations, and it was pretty much just through Facebook. And I think an email address had been put up, and you just submitted your music. And I was fortunate enough to get a reply back saying, "Yep, we definitely want you," which is it's not always like that. In many cases, it's just you email venues and promoters and you don't hear anything back. But yeah, a lot of the time it's luck. A lot of the time it's the connections that you have, who are you mutual friends with, that kind of thing. But this one was, it was not a normal way of doing it through Facebook. And definitely Sean was, as you say, he was very much, as he is. It's just he's like that before. He's like that on the stage. He's like that after. It's very down to earth, very very lovely guy. And I didn't get to spend that much time chatting with him, unfortunately. But no, he was a very sweet guy.
Well, I actually count that gig as in my top easily my top 3 gigs of all time. I mean, there wasn't many people there, and it wasn't, but it was just so. I don't know. Maybe it was maybe it was like a kid when you were a kid and you waited all your time to go to maybe down to visit Harrods or something, and you're like so giddy about it. It was always going to be. Well, to be honest though, Joe, when I came into the train into Glasgow, I was thinking, I just didn't want it to be, because I'm sure you've been the same when you've been in similar situations, and you go to see the artist in question, whether it's a musician or actually an artist, and you're like, oh, it's been the worst disappointment of my life. I expected so much. So I did have that kind of tinge walking into it, but it was perfect, and it was a really, and I thought that that's what I'm saying. I didn't manage to catch the end of your set because I was wandering around Glasgow like an idiot Englishman trying to find the gig venue. So by the time I walked in, I only got to see the last sort of 10 minutes. But like I say, the whole venue was and the whole night was a really kind of special event like that. So I mean, you seem to. And that's what I mean. If nothing else, like I said before, it was the opportunity for me. Was the extra bonus. I came across your music and your CD and stuff like this, and again, I mentioned it before, but it really kind of, I end up, because at the time I was going down to Leeds a lot, so I ended up going on the train and I was playing it over and over and over and over again, and it was just that album alone I could spend an hour talking to you about, and how it all came around. But I mean, on that subject there of this very album, which again I can't recommend highly enough, people will go out and somehow purchase this fantastic CD. But I mean, again, sort of tell me the whole kind of story behind this album, because there's so many. I mean, particularly I got there's tunes on this that I think are in my kind of now pantheon of all-time favorite tunes. Between Destinations is such a great tune. So there's so many great tunes on it. I would love to talk to you about, but kind of give me how this whole this whole process of making this came around.
Yeah, well, I had on my first EP, I'd created a little character that I'd called Me, which kind of just represented sort of my inner thoughts and my observations and things, and it kind of grew into a more of a collective sort of reflection of all our thoughts and observations and things, and that kind of grew into what the subject of the album became, which the Diary of Me isn't the sort of me just by myself. It's that character. It's me, the collective me, and I wanted the album to reflect that. So it's kind of like each song is a diary entry. It's different aspects of my life, of other people's lives, and that's I kind of do like to go in with a concept on an album. I know some people get quite sort of offended by concept albums, but I like them. But that record I created mainly in my home. I'm doing that with the second album as well, and I love collaborations, and there's many collaborations on the Diary of Me, and I usually do those via the internet because lots of my friends, we all don't live in the same place, and I find it quite an interesting way to work, where you have to send away your music to someone and you have no idea what they're going to do with it, and it's always it's always, so far it's been a pleasurable surprise every time I've had stuff come back, and it's really good fun. I love doing that.
Joe, do you know, you've hit upon a nail that I was saying to you before the podcast about why I do this and what sort of being my drive behind it. But one of the biggest bonuses, and I try to fly the flag for the network, which you just said about what we're trying to build on the new internet, which is a principle behind what you're just saying. But the thing that's really above everything else, and if and when we're all going to leave this mortal rock and we're going to go into that great void called death. You know what I mean? But the one thing I'll be most proud about if I ever left, is behind, is the fact of, out of these conversations, is exactly that, the collaborations that have happened. And I think it's just so, I'll send you beforehand. This is what I think is just key about where we live right now. It's opening these communications up and allowing collaborations, because this is so much of how much the world has changed in the last 20, 30 years. When I was in a band 20 years ago, we always loved to do collaborations, but like you say, once you're divided by maybe 50, 60 miles, it means getting on a car. But now, like I say, these channels are all open. And one of the things, I mean, you mentioned collaborations on the Diary of Me. I mean, again, was that through collaboration or just through someone you knew? But you have quite a touch to France and the French language. Was that a collaboration you knew through actual person to person, or was that done through the internet?
That was person to person. Yeah, my best friend for 15, 16 years now is French. So I always want to try and include an element of that in my music, because I love French music, and I've been to France quite a few times, and it's just, I want to reflect. It's kind of like I want to reflect the people around me in my music as well, and so I've co-written a few songs with my friend Celine. Yeah, it's been good.
Well, that's an interesting perspective as well, because I don't know much French, but I sort of I lived in Argentina for a while, so I kind of spent, again, a lot of time as a musician and as a writer. I was trying to collaborate and do stuff with people in Spanish, and then you understand that it's not as much just translating one word to another. Once you realize that there's a whole dynamic to another language, and that's what I'm fascinated with the thing with French. So when you were collaborating, like you said, with your friend, do you find the differences between the French and the English, and some parts that you almost can't put in and translate across, and you spend a lot of time trying to wrestle how do you get that across? Or
absolutely. I'd come up with a line in English, and she'd say, well, that doesn't work in French, that's going to sound really rubbish, and then we just work through until we get something that actually sounds and but also means similar to what we wanted in the first place. But it's so interesting, and it's shameful that my French isn't that great. Apparently my accent, my pronunciation is great, but I just, my brain freezes in conversation. It's just, you're speaking too fast for me. But see, I need to go and live in France for a bit. That's what needs to happen, and I'll pick it up. No worries.
No, that is exactly the way I was about to say. The best way to learn any language is just to dive in, and then soak it all in. And I think that, Joe, the other one as well, Joe, and again, because I was in the same situation. I was just literally dropped into Argentina. It was just life, thing. It wasn't anything we planned for. But when I'll tell you another one, I think it's a really good one to do, and I even to this day I still do it, and I try to do it with all random languages, Cantonese and all that. Is put some of this stuff on when you're asleep, because it's amazing how much it goes into your mind. And do you know what I mean? I'm sure that if I met a Chinese person, I wouldn't be able to speak any Chinese. But I know in the back of my head, there's somewhere I know that all that. It's in the memory bank somewhere. But I'm saying that's what you need. Like you said, the best way to learn the language is to dive in. And when you cracked it, is when you start to dream in the language. When I did that in Spanish, it was like, whoa, this is when I've cracked it, because I'm actually dreaming in Spanish. That's a very strange experience. So I mean, and one of the tunes I did mention, one of the tracks on Diary of Me, that again, I have a tendency, one of my quirks, I love to put a tune on it, and I end up putting it on a loop and a loop and a loop and a loop. And like I said, I ended up being on the train from Glasgow all the way down to Carlisle and all the way across down to Leeds, which is a lovely route. I mean, the Carlisle to Leeds route all goes across the Dales. It's beautiful. And I would sit there and I'd have between destinations, obviously, which is very relevant to being on a train and then the whole experience. But it was a line about looking out your window and does everybody see what I'm seeing, and why doesn't people see what it is? And again, I mean, I think I put these on Twitter, but these are some of the sort of pictures that I kind of drew when I was doing it, and that inspired that tune. So that tune, really, I mean, it's all about, again, because it's a very strange tune in the essence of it really hits me deep within. but yeah, I can't help but smiling because it's the way he goes, you know, like Cardiff. I can't. I don't even want to do it. I don't even want to attempt to do a Welsh accent. But you play with this whole dynamic. There's a lot of tugging between really deep and heartstring words and the way the feel of it, and then on the other hand, there's all you've
got a guy just doing
I mean, again, was that deliberate, or did that just come around in the process of that song? I mean, and how did that song? What was the sort of story behind that tune?
Well, I'd come up with a little melody on the ukulele, and I'd actually written some words in my diary about a train journey, and that particular train journey was from Cardiff to Port Talbot, which is a little place just outside Cardiff, and that particular day there were some very low clouds, and you've got the sort of like Welsh valleys and the hills and stuff, and I was just absolutely amazed by them, and just I felt quite childish inside of just like, oh, this is so exciting, look at these clouds. And nobody else on the train was interested in these amazing clouds that were just, you know, perched on the hills, and I kind of thought, oh wow, people are missing out. It's, you know, there's beauty in nature on your doorstep, and you know, Port Talbot's a very industrial place. It's kind of, I call it the Twilight Zone because it's just so bizarre when you get off the train. But yeah, it's just people were more interested in their phones, and you know, not looking at what's just outside of the window. So that's where the song came from, really. And I wanted, and I did want a bit of silliness in the song. I could hear a train conductor just listing off destinations, and I wanted to do the journey that I would take when I'd go back to visit my parents. So I think it's from Bristol to Cardiff in the song, and that's the train journey I would take very, very regularly. Yeah, so, and I know that the words are quite deep in the chorus bit of that. Yeah, but it's the way that people also just don't see you when you're traveling. I got on the train, and you're trying to make eye contact with a few people, and they don't want to know. I mean, sometimes they do, but most of the time it's just everyone's in their own little sort of worlds of their own. They've got headphones on and things, and they're not able to actually just be in the moment and disappear in the moment. Yeah.
But I mean, that's what played with me, Joe. Because obviously, when you're on a train and you've got nothing better to do, you just sat there. And again, I'm exactly saying, I've noticed that exactly same traits every time I observe people. They fail to recognise the beauty that's outside the door. I mean, even to the point. I mean, there's a famous biologist called E.O. Wilson, and he always put the challenge out and said, you know, people who will get, you know, almost complacent about the world around them. He said, go out to the nearest piece of turf you can find, dig out 1 square foot of it, and you can spend your lifetime looking at that 1 square foot, and you'll find microbes in there that scientists don't know. And that's the point. People, and it's fascinating because when I was listening to that tune and on the train, and it really, and I think it was kind of started the seed that I've been contemplating for ever since, you know, for months and months and months, really, was this idea that as much as we're, and I briefly touched on this before we went live, but as much as we're really connected as a species right now, we can have this amazing concept. I can even speak to someone in Inverness, or let alone Australia, and this is unbelievable. 10 years ago, this was fantasy. Yeah. But for all this connection that's going on, and I fly the flag as much as I can, trying to connect people for these new means and these new, you know, decentralized technologies and stuff, because I think it's crucial. But as much as we are connected, more than we've ever been as a species, we're so separate on a human level. Like you say, people walking around, and you know, I noticed it the other day. A perfect example of this the other day. I noticed a woman. And she was obviously just been in the pub, and she must have just left her phone in the pub, and she walked about 10 minutes outside and walked up the coast, and instead of looking at all the mountains around where I'm lucky enough to live in, she got about 20 meters from the pub and realised that she left her phone in, and she was in panic mode. And I thought, wow, look at us. We're obsessed by our phones in our pockets, and we can't go more than 10, 15 yards. But it's amazing. We've got all this connection, but yet on a day-to-day human level, we seem to be going further apart. And it was, as I'm saying, it was the seed of that kernel of that song really, really kind of hit the nail on the head. And I was wondering if that was something that was in your mind when you were writing that, or it's just something that's just an accident of the words that's made someone else think like that.
It's a lot of the time for me, it's an accident of the words, and I sort of reread them going, oh, that's quite deep. That's come from somewhere deep inside me. Yeah, it was just, that was just a fluke really of that's what came out.
Well, that's the great thing about, and that's what I always say to people. When I always say to people, you need to be, try to be creative, because this is what happens. You drop a seed, and then someone else. I mean, that's what I'm saying. You had no idea when you wrote that song that some guy, some Cockney guy who's happened to be in Glasgow would pick up your CD and have this thought process. But that's the essence of why we create, because we never know what these things are going to do down. But the one thing again in the Diary of Me again, and I don't know how I'm going to keep digging at this, but it seems a very personal album and a very deep album. Some of the lyrics in it are very, like I say, you tap into some. And I'm not being, I don't want to, it is the right word. You tap into some dark issues, the house burning down and again, was that whole album? You mentioned earlier on it was a diary of you as a person, but also was it a lifetime of stories being built into that, or was that just you just wanted to, like you say, almost write a concept and write around the whole idea and just put yourself into different situations?
Some of them are very personal, definitely, and it's interesting. Well, I find it interesting that a lot of people think the songs that are the most personal for me are not actually the ones that they're not personal at all. So that particular one, Paper Chains, that was definitely more tapping into the concept of that. And another one on the record, Intelligent Mr. Toad, is actually based on the diaries of Kenneth Williams, which I found quite fascinating. So I wrote about that, but quite a few people have said, oh, must be a really personal song for you, and it's not. So I think track like All That Patience Brings is a personal one. It's about insomnia and just, is this all that there is I'm patiently waiting for something to happen, but what is it? So so nobody's burned in a fire that I've known, thankfully.
I mean, where did this all start for you, Jo? I mean, were you like this as a child? Were you always drawing and then it led into music? Or, I mean, how did this whole process start for you? Where did it all begin?
Wow. Well, apparently there's a joke in my family that one of my first words was drums, which I don't think that's the case. Obviously, it's a little family tale, but music has always been something that I've been interested in, as well as drawing and art. But I mean, I haven't really come from a musical family necessarily. My mum could play the recorder, and that was about it. But my mum is a very good visual artist, and she does some beautiful work, which that's my mum's artwork on the cover of the Diary of Me. Yeah. But no, I've always had a love for music. A lot of my artwork is either inspired by or features music. And I started doing the kind of traditional thing of learning an instrument at school. And I started on classical guitar, and I didn't like that at all. I wanted to play rock music. I didn't want classical. And I discovered quite quickly that I couldn't read music as much as I tried. But then my school started doing drum lessons, and I wanted to do drums, definitely. And I can read drum notation because it's logical to me, but I can't seem to the melody-wise, I can't relate the notes melodically to an instrument, which hasn't been a problem. But I think not being able to read music has meant that I've been able to just play around and discover things and ways to play stuff that I've known a few of my classically trained friends that they just can't fathom how someone could come up with a bit of music and not know the notes for it, or like, you know, how do you play that if you're not reading it? Well, just kind of just turns up, you know. So yeah, so I've been playing since I was about 8 or 9, really, and after that I just self-taught, you know, guitar, and anything I could lay my hands on, I would have a go at playing it.
No, that's. I mean, it's a fascinating area you tap into because, like I said, when I lived in Argentina, one of the guys I know there, and I'm lucky enough to have met 3 of these guys in my life, who are just total geniuses. You know, he could pick up any instrument, he could read any. You know, it's just one of those. His dad was a really famous jazz musician, so he'd been schooled in it since he was birth, and he had all that natural attributes and stuff like that. But for all of this, he would say to me, because I'm just like you, I've always just been like a monkey prodding in the dark when I pick up instruments. I mean, I'm the same as you. I couldn't read a note for my life. Do you know, I can't read tab on guitar. I just whatever I just whatever, to me, I just, if I like a sound, I go with it. And and the thing was, I'll be doing the same thing with me. And this got into a very kind of discussion with him, and he used to say to me, "Do you know, I wish I could be like you." And I said, whoa. Man, I'm dreaming I could be like you and just pick up a saxophone or pick up a harpsichord or whatever. And he's like, no, because he says, you've got more freedom, because I've been tied. I spend my life trying to lose all the knowledge I've got about music. I'm trying to get back to that freer state of being. And I suppose it's the same with artwork. You know, I mean, they say the same. I mean, I went to art college and I spent maybe 10 years of my life since trying to de-learn everything I did learn at art college, because it was a state they taught you. And in some ways you need to go back to that whole just expressing yourself, and that's a freedom that I think sometimes I think that's why kids are put off music in school, because all they're taught is logical, and it's like, just let them have the freedom to express and hear sounds, because that's all we're playing with. We're just playing with sounds, and when we're an artist, we're playing with shapes and shades and colours and stuff. And it's all about the creative to me. And I just wish that was more taught in schools, that people were just given there's a bunch of instruments, go and create, because kids do. I mean, man, we all do. We love doing it. So, you know. So you mentioned that you went from the guitar and all that. By the way, okay, so when that's probably a lot of people's route. They go down and they play the guitar. But what led you to actually sort of start thinking, you know what, I'm going to take this and I'm going to for instance, I mean, what made you sort of go from being, I play guitars, I've got I've got my own sort of few songs. What made you go from that to thinking, well, I'm going to step out and play this live, and then maybe record some of it, and then there's a big difference between someone who knows they can play guitar and singing their own tunes themselves, but there's another step between taking that and putting it on stage, which I think is the bravest act anybody can do. To walk up on the stage and play your instrument is to me, I'm like, all power to you.
Well, I do. I do appreciate the experiences that I had in school, because it was through school that I was able to get the bug for performing. And when I reached secondary school, we had a fantastic music department that actually did let us do more of the creative stuff. They really encouraged us to be in bands, to write your own music, to just perform what you want to, which that was very important for me. But I just kind of thought that this is what musicians do. From an early age, I just thought you just perform it, because if you're not performing it to someone, then who's going to hear it? And yeah, I loved performing, and when I was younger, I was a huge fan of the Beatles actually, and I used to read about them a lot and watch documentaries and things, and I decided sort of about age 12 that I wanted to be the next George Martin as the producer. So my folks ended up getting me a 4-track tape recorder, and I just started just recording my own songs and things. I wanted to be a producer, which that hasn't died down, that dream necessarily, but I did get sort of sidetracked a bit. But yeah, it just felt natural that's what I should be doing. And I love recording. I found it just so fascinating and stuff, and especially with tape cassettes, that you could do things like turn it over and then you've got 2 tracks that are playing backwards, and then you can record over the top of that, and it was just, oh, this is fantastic. I love this. Yeah, and that's just developed further and stuff, and now we've got computers that will help as well, which I've really enjoyed working with computers as well. So it's just, yeah, I'm happy.
I think it's one of the areas I think it's absolutely fascinating to me. I mean, you mentioned then about cassettes, and I mean, I recommend you go and check them out on Twitter. And there's some really great guys called Outside Your House, and they set up a thing called Frux Tapes, and they're based down in by Durham, and they're bringing back cassettes. And it's amazing, because they had a cassette day, like the idea of record store day. Well,
there was a cassette day as well, wasn't there?
Yeah, and they were on this podcast a few weeks ago, and they were saying, people are lapping up, people loving cassettes and stuff. And I just think I think there's a beauty in some of these things that we've just, it's, again, taps into what we were saying when we were talking about between destinations, that we as a culture are just obsessed about jumping onto the latest thing, and we all went from, well, look at us all, we went from cassettes, we went from vinyl to cassettes, then we were sold cassettes were redundant, we go to CDs, then we went to CDs, oh, they're all past, go to mini discs. And
discs, yeah.
And exactly. I remember it's one of the hilarious things. I remember being, because I've been living up in Venezuela for 2 years. I remember meeting an English guy when I've been on the beach for 2 years, and he turned up at the beach with a set of mini disc in 2001, and I was like, "Whoa, you're from the future, man!" I had my rucksack full of CDs. Like spending hours trying to whittle down like what 20 CDs do I lump around the rest of the world with me, and there he was, just to these mini discs, but. We always move on, but then I think sometimes, like I'm saying, as much as we move on, we still have that. There's certain things we just in our rush just to move on, we actually forget what the actual beauty of cassettes was. And one of the beauty of cassettes was, and I'm exactly the same as you, was you could do it yourself. It was a really DIY. All you needed, like I say, you were lucky you had a 4-track, man. I remember just doing it tape to tape, man. I remember the old days just getting one tape, doing another tape, really dodgy open mic, and but you could. That was what was great about things like those. So I'm fascinated you back onto the cassettes. I mean, have you thought about maybe releasing one of your new albums on cassette?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, and I've looked into it, and they're actually, I mean, much like getting a run of vinyls, although they're not as expensive as getting vinyl, they are still quite a cost. Mm-hmm. So you'd have to charge quite a bit for them, and it's balancing out whether there's enough people that would want the cassettes. Mm-hmm. It's still. Yeah, because with vinyl, I'd still have to. There has to be a need for it to get it done, because it's just so expensive. But it would be lovely to have both of them. I'd love to release the next album on both formats.
Well, I think it's fascinating, and I think we live in a very I don't know, very special days. I think the greatest days to live in, really, because I think where we are right now is with all these things. I mean, I was just thinking then when you were just saying about, you're right. People right now, this is the balance I think all creative people have. It's kind of like, how much cost do we put into something for what we're going to get out? Because if not, we're not. That's the whole point about being an artist. And I think you think most people will get this. Is most of us play into the general stereotype. We're all starving artists. That's the
definitely.
So obviously, like you say, any outlay you're going to have, but that's what I'm saying. Why I try to thread the two is I think these are really exciting days, because again, we started. I maybe some, I spend a lot of time looking to these technologies and stuff. But I mean, most people have heard of 3D printing, but that's going to only accelerate. And I can see maybe 3, 4, 5 years time where people will be able to go, right, okay, I'll have any piece of music, and I'll be able to and print it in any form I like, whether it's a vinyl, cassette. So I just think it's going to open up some fascinating things, and then hopefully it should take the burden and the weight off us creative people and thinking, well, okay, how much am I going to put on outlaying? It should just make the cost a bit cheaper, hopefully, because I think that's what I'm saying. I'm how we were saying before we went live, but I think it's just really crucial that in these days that we live in, we need as many creative people to be creating as much as possible. I think we've got two strands going on. We've got a whole strand of humanity, which has always had between this whole, as we were saying before we went live, those who want control and those who want freedom, and we've got that going on, which has been a momentum of history that's gone throughout history. But equally, we've got that behind us, and in the horizon, we've got artificial intelligence is going to rise, and we got, and both of them, the only edge we've got as humans is our creativity, and that's why I think it's really crucial. So I'm fascinated to know, obviously, you being a creative person and you doing what you do. How do you feel about all this? Do you feel optimistic about the future? Do you feel pessimistic with both the issues I'm talking about, with the whole general mindset where we are and momentum, and equally, I mean, the future of technology? Do you think we get heading to an optimistic future or a negative future?
Well, I think a bit of both, to be honest. I think it's all about how it's used. I'm very optimistic about it. I'm thankful so far for all the technological developments that have enabled me to be able to make my first album, to work with other people all over the world, and I've been able to, I can bypass some of the really expensive stuff like booking a studio, mastering stuff. I can do all that myself. But obviously, there's still a need for studios and people who can master stuff. But it's kind of the ways that it could necessarily not be an optimistic thing would be things like Apple's got a huge monopoly over certain areas of technology. The big record labels want things to go in a certain direction, which, I mean, and that's always been there, and that's, the big corporations and stuff, they want the world to be the way they want it. But I do think that there's enough of the sort of creative underground that just will always be there and won't let that happen too much. Yep. If that makes sense. Yeah. So optimistic for me. I think it can only get better, and the more that people sort of embrace and work with the technology, to make it how they see it. I'm not. Yeah, my words aren't coming out right, but I think you know what I mean.
I know exactly what you mean. I know exactly what you mean, Joe. And this is one of the reasons why I fly the flag. I mean, I'm no coder. I don't know. I don't work for any company. I just see techno. When I saw what MaidSafe, and again, another Scottish company, and they were like basically just trying to go, well, what we're going to do is just make the internet as it should have been from day one, where there's no, like you said, no corporations, no one between us. It's just one-to-one connection. And once you can, which to me was the genius moment of it, where they can monetize that and go, okay, so you're going to get direct reward for what you create, no middlemen at all. When I'm going to go through a record company, I haven't got to go through. I can put something up, and then because I'm on a network, people viewing it. That to me was like an epoch moment, and I thought, wow. And do you know what has inspired me more about all this, Joe? You just said that you hit the nail right on the head, and the words you said was, it's all bubbling underground. But what I love about it is this whole new, which it's going to change everything, because it's the new internet compared to the old internet, because people are going to get sick and tired. And once people are starting to, as they are, they're starting to realize that not only is there's all these middlemen and corporations that can just override it all. They realize how weak the servers are, how much, and then you don't even get into the whole area of security and privacy, and about how what the, you know, certain states and government, man, our government, man, look what they're trying to do with the back door and making us all like no. So I just think when you offer people a system where none of those problems are, it's just a world where it's just direct correct connection is going to take over. But what I love about it is the people who are shaping it, building it, coding it, everything about it. It's all of us. And that's why I tell people, like, come aboard, because we're shaping it. It's not some suit in California. It ain't some suit in MI5. This is a bunch of, you know, look at us. We're just a ragtag bunch of people. But we got, that's what I'm trying to say to people, but we've got the ability to shape the future. And that's what really inspires me, that as much as right now they don't know about it, great. I don't want them to know about it. I want it to be kind of like Wicked. When it all comes through, just like any music form did. When the blues came through, nobody knew about it, and then bang. When hip hop came through, nobody knew it, and bang. This is what I want it to happen again. So by the time we've got it all in control, it doesn't matter when Apple come on and go, oh, we'll have our old model working between musicians, and we feel like good luck to you, mate. The new world has dawned, and now musicians are directly rewarded without anybody coming in the middleman. And that's what I'm trying to say is you tapped into it when you said bubbling under, and I see it everywhere, because I see not only with what we're talking about with technology, but I see everywhere there's so much creativity that's just waiting to be pushed through. But at the moment, it doesn't suit the record industry, it doesn't suit record companies, because they're not making a big enough cut. But doesn't mean to say that it's not out there. I just sort of see it as like, I view the creative industry at the moment as like a desert. And underneath, there's all these seeds just waiting for the first bit of rain. And once we've got that freedom and we've got that ability to do things ourselves, it's going to change everything. And then that's where we're lucky enough to live in the days we are. Sorry, that's my big rant.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Sorry, I was on a riff there, Joe. Go on.
No, that's good. No, definitely. I completely agree. And I'm already seeing it in the creative world. I've got friends who are very into the kind of sort of new punk scene, and that's just thriving. There's so much going on. They're doing these amazing tours all over the world, that they're going house to house. They're doing house concerts, and you know, and you start getting connected with those people, and then suddenly it's just like sort of bam, you've got all these new connections, and it's fantastic. And you know, I don't think we necessarily have that if we didn't have the internet. You know, it is such a good communicative tool. And yeah, it's very exciting to see stuff like that happening, and I can only see more of it happening.
That's what I'm saying. You're absolutely right, Joe. It's a crucial tool, and that's why I fly the flag for what I do. I think it's just crucial that we wrestle this back from corporations and governments, and we have it as it should be. We don't look. When you get down to really deep levels of this, you know, we're all born onto a rock, and we're going to leave this rock, and in the meantime, we're just tumbling through space. And nobody has got the right to come between me and say, well, you can't do this. Whether it's a corporation, a government, no one. No, we should all be able to just leave us alone to do what we want to do, and that's why. Like you say, it's a great tool, but I don't want this tool has been corrupted, and I want we have the real tool, you know, and that's what that's why I think it's crucial that we do this, because I think on a really deep level, Joe, and we talk, we bounce around ideas about creativity and music and stuff, but I think, like I said before we go in life, it's crucial in the days we live in that this needs to happen, because I've seen in my lifetime that the more people have connected, funnily enough, racism's gone out, you know, it's died down. Sexism's gone, you know, changed completely. You know, a lot of the, you know, I'm not saying we're there completely in the utopia, but man, compared to what it was like in the 70s, we've moved a long way. And that's because people have met people, they've connected them, and they're like, actually, we're just all on a rock spinning through space. Let's get over ourselves. And that's why I think it's really crucial that these gateways and these connections are happening. But we need to keep it up, because I think for the better of mankind, we need to evolve rather than just descending into extremes on either side, where people just throwing rocks and shouting and screaming at each other, because it doesn't get us anywhere. And ultimately, we're, like I say, we're just on a rock that's tumbling through space. It's not really important. And more important to us is, like I said, we've got AI and we've got a lot of things in the future to worry about. We don't need to be squabbling amongst ourselves just because of who decides who can speak to who, whether that's a state, a government, a corporation, whoever it is. I think it's really crucial. And we were saying before we went live, especially in this, what's gone on in Paris over the last few days. This isn't, we don't need to be. It's not right, and I don't care if it's right in Paris or whether you're living in the middle of Lebanon and you're getting some drone dropping onto it. None of it's right.
Yeah.
We need to get ourselves over this, and we can. But the only way we can is if people. That's why I'm always flying the flag for creative people, because it's like anything else. The creative people, we are the ones that are putting our heads above the parapet and saying, "Please stop this."
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, I did the Paris stuff did shock me, and I think, I mean, obviously because my best friend's Parisian as well, and she was telling me about the venue, the Bataclan. She's been there lots and lots of times, and if she'd still have been in France, there's a likelihood she probably would have been at that gig. And attacking creativity, because that did feel like an attack on creativity and the freedom to enjoy yourself with other people and just be lost in the music and stuff. It was saddening, but it's also that it was a very small amount of people that did that. They did. What am I trying to say? I have a point here. Words. Just. I think because obviously the band Eagles of Death Metal, who are amazing, yes, they had to cancel the rest of their tour because they lost quite a few people, but the outpouring of love from them, from everyone that was at the gig, the response from Paris, from the Parisian people was, we're not going to show you hatred, we're going to show you love. The response from the government was to fly over Syria and drop some bombs. So, I think there's definitely, and my best friend has said, and it's obviously the French woman in her, that we need a revolution again. But at this time, not just in one place. We need a worldwide revolution. Which I think we almost touched upon that a little bit with the anonymous stuff. That's kind of died down. It's just, I feel in a way it's become a little bit of a novelty that anonymous are still going. And it's almost like we keep getting to these points where we could have a revolution, but it does still feel like it's with us, the sort of the creatives and things, that I think more of us need to be vocal about it, for more people in general to just, get on board and say, this isn't right. We don't have to put up with all this stuff.
You're absolutely right, Jo. And I mean, I said to you before we went, before we went live. I mean, the reason I put my head above the parapet, I could quite easily. I mean, I'm an artist. I'm not a musician. I don't particularly like going out in the public. I'm not something I love doing. I don't walk around and think I'm the big me. But the reason I do this, and that's why I've been, like I say, I'm a bit more kind of down the road than most people I know around me, and I remember feeling like this in the 90s and thinking, oh man, we need this, and I came to the conclusion, when it didn't happen, and well, my generation voted in Blair. Well done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
just another one, but that happened because we thought, oh, maybe the other side won't be as like warmongering as the other, but they're all warmongers. A lot of them, they're all. It doesn't matter what flag you fly, but the point is, I remember coming in and wrestling this with her, that's one of the reasons why I did kind of get out of England and stuff, because I thought, well, this is never going to progress until we can basically, like in the last Great Enlightenment process, we had to break the state from the church, and that was one of the Great Enlightenment moments when that's what we did. We went, right, no more of the church and the state got any relationship, but what they keep us all in, and it ties to what you just said, is that like you said, Paris comes out and says we love you. The French state, what do? They drop bombs. And where do they get the money to do that from? Because they've got guns and they can tax people. Now, if we can separate them from money, this is why I flagged the flag for these decentralized networks, because they're basically saying today, and it's not just one made safer, which I think is going to be a huge one, because I think once you get a network and take completely, you don't need a dollar out of their hands, then it's kind of like, well, okay, then you're going to have to, they can't do it. They do this because that's the point, because they've got laws, and if you don't obey their laws, they throw you in a cage, and that's the power they have over us. And if all the time they're doing that, and they've got everybody else's money to spend, they're going to drop bombs because that's what they're like, and we need to cut that. And that's why I fly these flags of these, because I think the real revolution isn't breaking down buildings, isn't smashing up banks. I've lived in Argentina where they've done all that. Great, well done. All you do is destroy property. The real revolution, or what you want to call it, is when we just all walk away and we go, well, we're going to leave all that behind. We're going to leave all your taxes and all your state corporations, and we're just not going to feed you lot anymore, and we're going to do this ourselves. We're just going to walk away. But that's where we are right now, and it's taken 20 years for me to get to this point where I can actually say to people, look, there is solutions coming. Now, it might not happen. I don't know. And I might sit here, be flying the flag, and the whole thing gets wiped out, and the MI5 come in and kill us all. I don't know, but you can only fly the flag, because I think it's crucial that we tell people that when they realise, this is the wake-up moment I'm seeing all over the world, is when people realise, like, the only reason they can do all this, and all this is being caused, is down to these states and these corporations that have basically got us all under this delusion of money. And if we can break free of it in any way possible, then people, you need to do it, because it's doing this to humanity, and we need to break ourselves from it.
Yeah, absolutely.
There we go. Man, this is turning into a behind the dogs kind of meeting, man. No, one of the things that, again, one of the areas I really wanted to talk to you about, because I think it's something I spend a lot of time sort of telling people in private and on this podcast to do all the time, is to do drawing journals. I love doing them. I do it for every podcast. I'll do a mind map. You'll see the one I do it. I do it all the time. I think it's a really good, that's my artist. And I've done these things for ages, and then bang, like I say, I picked up the diary of me, listened to that, and then I started following you on Twitter, and like, you do this every day of your life as well. So
almost every day,
almost every day. I mean, you're pretty, fair enough, you miss the odd day and then, but you've kept it going for a long sort of time. So when did that whole kind of process start from you, and what made you actually sort of think, I'm going to do this on a daily basis? Because I think it's brilliant. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It was like, whoa, there's someone else I'm not the only one who's doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think I'd stopped keeping a written diary for quite some time, and I'd had kind of quite a sort of emotional couple of weeks earlier this year, and I just thought, how can I express what's happening in my life in a way that's actually a bit more interesting for me, and could sort of, and I hadn't initially thought of showing people it, but I just thought, actually, do you know what? I'll start doing these sketch journals, and let's see how long I can keep it going. I mean, I thought I'd last 5 days, and I've months and months have gone by, and I've slowed down a little bit now, but I think posting them publicly has meant that I've had to think about my day a lot more than I would have if it was just completely private. And it's in some ways it's allowed me to focus on more of the positive stuff that's happened to me, and I've found that that's actually been quite healthy. But there have been some days that I've just drawn, like, oh, I feel shit today. Everything's shit. I'm just going to draw a picture of a shit. It's kind of, some days you just can't help it. But I do find it to be a good experience, definitely. It's freed my mind quite a bit as well. If just, I'm just going to get it all out onto a page, and, and people tweet at me and saying, are you going to do your sketch journal for today? I'm tired today. I can't. These past couple of months since I moved up to Inverness, I've been sort of quite busy doing stuff, and it gets to sort of 10 o'clock at night, and I can't do it. I just haven't got it in me. But when a few important things happen, or when I think, oh, this will be really interesting, you know, I do draw it. But yeah, it has been fun so far.
You're right, Joe. It's one of the things that, you know, particularly if you're, you know, drawing with, you know, and as you say, artistic as in drawing and doing illustration stuff. I've always thought, and I think this is true of everything. It's one of the things, particularly, and I've seen musicians, artists, and all that, and it becomes almost like a weight that ties us down, because it goes to something we actually enjoy, and it's like, and everybody loves it, and then you think, oh, and it should never. And that's why I'm like, no, I'll do everything for myself, and if I have to stop doing something for months on end, that, well, people can deal with that, because there's nothing worse, like you say, when you feel like you're a slave to something that you actually started, because you end up, it's like it ends up being like a, you know, like a relationship or something, or a toy. You're like, at the beginning you love it, and then by the end you're hating it, and you just end up, I don't want to end up hating something I like doing. So when you do it, I mean, you mentioned then you do it late at night. Is that something when are you generally more creative at late at night or early in the morning? Because I've spoken to many people where it seems to be like we're all night owls, so I'm wondering if it's the same for you.
Yeah, sometimes I think more often than not it's at night when I'm the most creative, or it's when I have ideas to be creative. That's usually the reason why I can't sleep, is because I have, you know, a lyric or a melody or a picture idea that, you know, I've really, you know, it's 3 a.m, but I need to get this down. I need to do it, and then after that I can go to sleep. But yeah, I do tend to do a lot of my thinking at night time. But I find that I'm more sort of practically productive morning time. So that's when I can get stuff, you know, recorded or when I draw it. But for the sketch journals, that was just because it was the end of the day and I had time to reflect over what had happened. And if I didn't write it down or draw it, I'd probably forget by the following day. So, yeah.
No, I think this it taps into what we kind of skirted upon earlier on. That I'm convinced that there's creativity is completely linked into those amount of hours, whenever how many hours you want to sleep. That sleep process, I really do. I think I'm the same. Whether I'm going, you know, like I'm saying, about to go into sleep, or I'm just out of sleep. I've always found those two ends of the spectrum is when I'm most creative. Now, like I say, it's almost like the same. I'm the same as you, where the two near the sleep process you get creative, and then the rest of the day is almost spent of like, okay, you don't want to be creative, and I'm the way. When I'm not creative, I don't want to be creative, and I'll do everything else, or I'll go for a walk or this sort of stuff. Now I know I'm imagining that we're very much like-minded on this, because there's not many people that after leaving Glasgow, and I remember reading your tweets thinking, I'm leaving Glasgow, I thought, oh, okay, she's going to go back down, because most people when they leave Glasgow, they go, no, that's what I mean, you took the path that less trod, and you went up north to Inverness.
Yeah, further north. Yeah.
No, I love Inverness. I mean, I not Inverness particularly, but all around there is.
Yeah.
I mean, if I could, I would be up there tomorrow. But I think it's the most magical. Well, magical. There you go. I will use the old sense of the word, magical part of Scotland. So I mean, well, again, I mean, was that what made you go up to Inverness? Was that a deliberate decision? And how are you finding living up there? Because I'd imagine all the things that, even in Glasgow, all the noise and the bustle, it all disappears where you are. I know, I'm not saying Inverness, for people listening all around the world, Inverness isn't some, you know, like one
actually, it's a city, apparently. It's a small town, really, but it's called a city because it has a cathedral now, you know. So, yeah, you're not really a city.
So that's what I'm saying. I mean, obviously, the nature and the solitude was what's driven up there, I'd imagine. Is that all? Or was there anything else particularly that drove you to go up to Inverness?
Well, I did a tour a couple of years ago, and Inverness was one of the dates, and from just playing here that time, and meeting the people who I actually live in a house with now, who ran the cafe that I played at. It just, some places just feel like home when you get there, and that I definitely felt that in Inverness, and it's always been on the cards that eventually of coming up here, of spending some time. So my first move was to go from Cardiff to Glasgow and spend a year in Glasgow, and then the opportunity just came up that there was a room free, and did I want it, basically. And he was like, yeah, okay, definitely. And I'd spent, I came up here in, I think it was June. There's a thing here called Expo North, which is just an excuse to see lots of cool musicians from Scotland and around come and play. They do some talks, just anything to do with the creative industries in Scotland. And I spent a sunny few days up here, just walking along sort of the river across to the canal, and it was beautiful. It's like, yeah, it's going to give me some good headspace. And so far it's just been, it's been beautiful to discover, the Cairngorms, and just so much beauty around.
well, I don't know about Inverness itself, but like I say, I have kind of spent some time around Inverness, and again, I can't speak for Inverness, where you are exactly, but one of the things, particularly when you start driving north of Glasgow, well, to be fair, sometimes south of Glasgow as well, but even where I'm at, the night skies are absolutely. I never thought I would see the Milky Way in this part of the world. And I remember going up, like you say, the first time I went up, we stayed right up past right by Ben Nevis, and I remember looking at night, and I'm like, oh my God, I can see the Milky Way. I'd imagine that's. I don't know. I don't know whether you're.
In Inverness itself, not so much. But apparently, you could just drive sort of 10 minutes outside, and when the Northern Lights are showing, you can see them. It's kind of like, I can see the Northern Lights here. That's fantastic. I haven't seen the Milky Way yet, but I'm really looking forward to just being, because I don't drive, so that's one of the kind of things that if I did drive, I'd be out in the middle of the night going places, just looking at the stars. Yeah.
Yeah. I can. So, are you as Inverness as a place? Is it quite? I mean, are you managing to get sort of gigs in Inverness, or is it not? As enough people in to support a gig? I don't know. I've driven through Inverness, so I haven't really got a clue of the place. So
there is a good small creative community here. I've not been particularly proactive yet in booking gigs, because I'm trying to get an album finished. But yeah, I've been to a few gigs and stuff here. There are some nice wee venues and stuff, and I think it's probably missing maybe one or two more kind of mid-sized venues. It could do with a few more, and I think there is a demand for it. But yeah, it's okay. It's not Glasgow. There's not stuff, it's not amazingly, just go out every night and there's something cool happening. But it does have its charm, and definitely, I think as well, once maybe two or three people here, you just start knowing the whole city. It's so tight knit in that sense. Because I think I was looking at populations and stuff. I think Inverness has 50,000 people, and Glasgow has 500,000 people. So that puts it into perspective a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Go on.
Well, no, and the further north you get, the smaller everything becomes. It's just, once you're past Inverness, there's not really a big, place anymore. It's small and beautiful, and desolate and wonderful.
Exactly. It's amazing how, and I've done both. I mean, like Joe, I lived in Buenos Aires, which is like 23 million people. So I kind of know what living amongst a lot of people is, and I get the excitement of it. Like you said, I'm like you. But I would never in my life. I mean, I'm not saying you can never say never, but if it was my choice, I would never live in a city ever again, because like I say, I prefer the desolation. I'd rather just look out my window and see rain and rocks and mountains than I would do seeing people and drunks and, you know, noise and bustle. So you're not unique in it. You're not unique, but you chose. But that's the thing. You chose the really best. I mean, that's what I'm saying. You've actually chosen. If you're on that route, you can't. I can't think of anything anywhere better to be than where you are, because. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I get to look out. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Every morning I look out, I look up towards you, thinking, "Oh, that's when the real mountains start." I've got a few little, you know, we've got a few mountains around us, but the big boys will start up there around there.
Yeah, so I mean, I just like a couple of days ago, I went through the centre and just looked across and was like, "Oh wow, there's snow on those mountains." Wow. It's like I'd never seen that before, but it's just, I live here and there's snow over there. That's fantastic. Yeah, I get very excited by small things like that. I see a heron and I'm just like, oh, look, a heron. That's amazing.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like the same job. I mean, even here we get, you know, on maybe once, twice a month, we get all these little roe deers come down, and they come into our back garden, and it's just like, yeah, exactly. I'm blown, and the neighbours are like, yeah, whatever. It's like seeing a fox.
They're a nuisance or something. It's like, yeah, no, they're amazing.
But exactly, it's almost like they equate seeing a deer in the back garden to what maybe someone living in, I don't know, Leeds or Liverpool would be like, oh yeah, fox, well done, you know, they're everywhere. And it's like, I can never not be blown away by it. But one of the things you're talking about desolation, while we're on the Inverness one, have you been any kind of further up north and to the west, up towards Ullapool and stuff? Because you want desolation. Oh my lord, go up to that corner.
I haven't yet. I really do want to, and my aunt lives on Shetland, so I've got to go up there as well. I mean, yeah, that's desolate.
Yeah, I've got a pal up in Shetland, and the strange one about Shetland is, like I say, he's always sending me you know, on Twitter and stuff, and there's lovely pictures, you know, like Shetland in the summer. It looks like a tropical beach. But the weird thing is, I don't know if I maybe need to sort of check this out. Hey, I'm no biologist, scientist, professor, but as far as I understand it, there's no trees on Shetland.
No, there aren't. There aren't. I've heard that. There aren't. Yeah. It's because it's so windy, I think.
And that's what puts me off. I think I don't know if I could live somewhere that would even. I love
you've got to have trees. You definitely have to
have trees. Yeah. Exactly. You've got to have. Yeah, and that's what put. Yeah. I love the idea of Shetland. It's nice and isolated, but no trees.
Probably a bit too isolated. I mean, that's the thing with Inverness. My favourite spot at the moment just to walk is. I mean, it's a 20-minute walk. So you're in the centre of town. You walk 20 minutes, and you're in this beautiful area of woodland. These little islands that you walk across that have bridges and things, and it's just, you know, it's stunning. And you're in the centre of, you know, town. It's fantastic. And I've never had that. I mean, I've had parks and things, but it's just not the same as just seeing a salmon jump out of the river next to you. And you kind of like, there's a salmon. It's just, I'm always walking around. Just, I'm one of those, you know, crazy talks to birds and trees kind of people. Of like, just, you know, it's fantastic. I get so excited just going on a daily walk, and it's coming out in my music as well. Of just, I'm happy to be here. It's really good for my health. So probably I'll stay here for a while. Canada next. I keep saying to my parents keep sort of going, how further north are you going to move? You know, from Bristol all the way up to Inverness and stuff. We're just like, well, maybe Canada, is that too far for you? Could do Iceland, you know.
I can't remember that off the top of my head. It was a perfect example. I can't remember the name of the woman off the top of my head, but there's a woman right now. And she lives the furthest north, you know, right on the Arctic Circle. She's living miles. I mean, she's badass. But you know what I mean? She doesn't get to see anybody, you know, for months on end. You know what I mean? I watched a podcast with her the other week, and I was like, oof. There's desolation, but she was one of the things. I mean, you just mentioned that, and I have to sort of mention this story because I'm fascinated by it. I mean, she was saying because she's up on these. Obviously, she's got to carry on a shotgun for the bears and all. All the kind of things you expect for someone living out so desolate. But the one thing you would never consider was that up there, they let you live up there. The Canadian Inuits now they let you live up there, but you're not allowed any permanent structure. So she lives in a kind of like a wall, a skinned kind of tent house. It's all modern sort of communities as much as you can be, but because it's just made of skins, the thing she has to worry about most, and she says she doesn't know whether it's going to hit at any point, was that some person could leave like a tin can, maybe 400 or 500 miles away on a beach. Drop it, and that thing will be picked up by an Arctic wind and just flies through her building like a missile. And
wow,
she's saying the amount of people that are killed up there just by debris because people are just chucking their litter away, and people don't think, oh well, what? It's amazing. You think again, this is another example when someone does one example one place, they don't think of the consequences somewhere else. So as one point I'm trying to make. So whenever your parents say, "Oh, you're going to go up in Canada," go, "Yeah, well, at least I'm not going to live like that woman up in the Arctic."
No, I need to be around some people. I need to have people around me a bit. That's why I chose Inverness. It was enough people to keep me company and stuff to do, but I like having the solitude a bit myself, but I like to be able to come back to a house that has people in it that I can talk to that talk back that aren't just on a computer screen. I need contact.
I mean, you mentioned it, and you just kind of like last part, you're discussing. You did mention that you're working on a new album, and if you go to your sort of website, you kind of be sort of saying end of the year, maybe November. So I mean, where are we down with that process? Because I know that you. Well, it's gone from 9 to 12, and I know you're playing around with some of the tunes and stuff. So where we come, here we are on the 18th of November. Where do we stand with this, Jo?
Well, I keep having different ideas of stuff because I kind of penciled in maybe March for the album release, but it's sort of because I did a bit of a crowdfund for it earlier in the year, and I've got people waiting, and it's sort of I'm quite keen on the idea of maybe releasing 2 EPs instead. Because we've got at the moment there's about 5 tracks that are almost finished. It's at that stage where we're just in production, just sorting them out, and they all kind of really work well together. And I'm very tempted to have just 2 releases, so we're able to get something out sooner. And it probably would still. I mean, the first EP would probably still be March, but it gives us more time to work on the second half of the record. And eventually it would become the album. It would be, like someone said to me, it'd be just 2 sides of a record, where you've got one side that's got its own sort of theme, and then the other side that's got its own theme, but all of it's ultimately connected. And I quite like the idea of having those 2 separate releases. So at this point in time, there could be an album. I might just go, no, I'm just doing the album, and it'll probably be out March time. If it's not, it'll be an EP that's out in March.
Well, that's perfect. So, I mean, that's one of the things about I think from the with all creative projects that's why I never put any firm dates on anything. I'm just like it'll be ready when it's ready, because you can just again, it's one of those things we mentioned earlier on. You can become almost like a slave to the pressure you put yourself under, and it's like Now, what you just mentioned then, this is a fascinating thing, obviously, that that we kind of briefly mentioned in this conversation about where the future is going to go and stuff. But you mentioned there crowdfunding and stuff like that. Now, how did your experience with that go? Because I work closely with quite a few bands doing their artwork and stuff. One of the bands I work most closely with is maybe the Ceiling Demons, and we kind of just stuck. Well, I know they've particularly discovered, but they basically didn't go down the crowdfunding route, because they basically thought that it just becomes exactly what you just mentioned earlier on. We were tapping on upon that. It becomes the crowd almost dictate what you have to do, and they didn't like that. They like the idea as much as it's great, because we're all looking for resources, which is where hopefully that we're trying to build what we're trying to be, where you can directly have all resources. But so how have you found that crowdfunding experience, and have you considered things like, you know, even in the current world we are, where we're not quite there, but if you consider things like Bitcoin and opening up that kind of, you know, to open your donations pages and stuff like that, have you considered those sort of?
Well, I crowdfunded the first album as well, and both times I've not quite reached my goal, but I managed to choose you know, the option of just getting the funds. Whatever happens, I'll get the money for it. So the first album enabled me to buy some recording equipment, and, you know, I covered the rest of the stuff myself. And this time, pretty much the same thing. Now, I did do a crowdfund for an art project, which was linked with. I'm a big fan of Doctor Who, so I did a Doctor Who themed comic book, and that I reached 400% of my goal, you know, over my goal. So it's I think because music is such a personal thing, it doesn't appeal to everybody. You know, my fan base at the moment is quite modest, so, you know, a lot of the time with crowdfunding, it's the same people that have supported you, you know, throughout your career so far. And I wouldn't say that anybody's dictated to me, you know, what I should do. It's more of a personal pressure of that I'd like to keep my fans happy, the people who have backed me. It's important to me. You know, they've had faith in me. They trust that I'm, you know, going to produce something that's great for them, and, you know, I want to see that through. And I haven't considered anything like Bitcoin, but I have considered something like, you've heard of Patreon. I'm definitely thinking of doing that, or at least giving it a go, because a few of my friends are doing it, and they're managing to get, you know, even just maybe $200 a month or something. But that's a really lovely way of just having your fans show support, that whatever you're doing, they're really happy to support you. They want you to be creative, and they'd like to enable you to do that. And I think that's amazing. I think that's just a brilliant thing. So I'm definitely going to give that a go, for sure.
Well, Joe, that's exactly the drive, as I mentioned before. That's the drive. You know, again, this has been built by far more intelligent people than me. You know what I mean? Well, there's only a few of us. I'm not sitting here. I don't want them to make out that we're some giant, you know, 50-man operation. It's not just a few of us. You know, it's just, you know, I know one of the coders. But the point I'm trying to make is the drive and the whole ethos of what we've driven has always been of, like, I always look at it from both sides. I love what you do, Joe. So if I want to, you know, if I wanted to support you, and I had maybe 20 quid in my back pocket, I know I want to give you that 20 quid and know that's going to go into you to make sure that you're going to have what you do, so you can go off. That's brilliant. That's how it should be. But I know, other than me walking up to you in Inverness and handing you 20 quid, every other process is someone's going to get their sticky fingers on it, and they're going to chop away at that little 20 quid. And before you know it, you're maybe getting 12 quid of it. And you're like, wait a minute, I gave her 20. And that's why I fly the flag for, because I think, as you said, you do find that this is what I think that we're seeing is networks. And you have a network of, like you say, a band of people around you that go, really, that's great, I want to support you. And if we can just find methods and make methods easier for they can directly support you, where it doesn't even come to them having to go, oh, I've got to put, you know, my account number or anything. It's just by looking at your stuff. And let alone they could put anything that's going to basically cut the middlemen out and do that, to me is exactly what we fly the flag for. Now, like I say, I'm overwhelmed. I mean, every band, every musician, everyone I tell about this, it just gets really excited. That's why I say to people, hey, come along, give me your ideas, because this is a completely open source idea. But I just think the more it's like anything else. It's all about word of mouth. You tell more people, tell more people, tell more people, and before you know it, that's what I want to do. I mean, don't want to get too deep on this, but I was always told one of the greatest things I was ever told when I went to university, when I did a creative writing degree. My lecturer, she said to us, because I said to her, why do you actually do this, Harry? You know, why do you spend your life sitting there teaching a bunch of kids, about literature? And she said, do you know what the whole point of it is? That every person we do it who's in the creative industry is one less person feeding the war machine. And I've always thought that's just perfect. And that's what that's why I'm so passionate about this, because I just think it's really important we find as many we ease the roots. We make it easier for people to create, and we make it easier for people to be like that, because we can evolve then. Because all the time that people are playing music or doing artwork like that, and they're not going out and doing what they do in streets, or they're sitting in bombing people with drones and stuff, then that's to me, it's all well and good. And that's why I fly the flag. And I think it's, but like anything else, you're not going to hear this on you're not going to hear this on the TV. You ain't going to hear. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Why is it left to people like me to fly the flag? I mean, it's not right. But that is why it's crucial. Like everything else, it goes word to word, mouth to mouth to mouth. And I say to people all the time, don't take my word for it. I don't work for anybody. Go out and research it yourself. But instead of when you do get the knowledge, don't just hide away and think, oh well, no, do it like everything else. If you want the world to change, you've got to get up and do it yourself and contribute that way. And instead of seeing it as a burden, oh, I've got to contribute, think of it the other way around, thinking, wow, I'm building a new world and I'm shaping a new world and I'm helping people. And if that's not a drive for people, then well, I don't even want then good luck, because I don't want to live in a world where those people are in control.
Yep.
So sorry, guys, I'm going off on too many rants and rants today. But so you got your new album coming out and stuff like that. So what you got any more? You got any more gigs and stuff planned between now and the album coming out? Or what's your thoughts?
Not yet, but I'm quite sort of free. When stuff comes up, I get asked to play things quite regularly. So there no doubt there will be some gigs between now and the album release. Well, there definitely will be, but I don't know what those are yet. So if you have any gigs, or if you'd like me to come and play, let me know.
Well, that's again, this taps into something, because like I say, I mean, it's a very live subject. I was talking last night to some of the guys in the Ceiling Demons, and we were talking about this very thing, about how the difficulty in trying to get gigs, the difficulty in trying to find these connections and stuff like that. So I think it's great, Joe. I mean, I know you mentioned this with gigs and stuff like this. And again, if people were, and you mentioned earlier on in this conversation, you're saying you're open to collaboration, stuff like that. Okay, so how could people, what would be the steps they would, to reach out towards you? Would it be through Twitter? I mean, how would you recommend people, if they really did if they did want to, like, say a band really wanted to go, I really fancy having her, collaborating with her, what would be the actual concrete steps to going down to do that with you?
Well, a lot of the collaborations that I had on the first record were via Twitter, and I love Twitter so much for that. And I think because you have to condense your words into 40 characters or whatever it is, you have to be very direct in what you want. But yeah, you can reach me via Twitter. I've got a Facebook page. It's all right, but you can reach me through that if you like. And then I've just got my website, which I have a contact form. But actually, just Twitter is the best. I prefer it.
And I know that, because I mean, like I say, I was talking to, and I'm not speaking out of turn, but I know there's a lot of people who really love your voice, Joe. And I've had conversations with people, bands and stuff like that, and they just love your. They say almost, again, I don't want to sound cliche, but you've almost got an angelic voice. You've got a very cutting, and that in the sense of that it cuts through. Like I said, you've got this, and you know what I mean, and I don't know. I'm sure now that I have to sort of mention this, because I was saying I've been asked a lot, like ask Jo, she's up for collaboration. Ask Jo, she's up for collaboration. So
Oh, absolutely, yes. I mean, I collaborate. That's the main thing that I love to do. I'm collaborating on this
the current record, I'm working on a few tracks with different artists as well. Yeah, I'm always up for collaborating. So don't ever feel afraid, or anyone needs to ask permission or whatever. Just ask me, and I'll let you know. Tell me your project, and I'll see what's happening with me at the time. But I'm usually up for it.
Well, I mean, you know, on that very sort of thing, and we were talking about your new album and new tracks coming out. I mean, you did, send me a track earlier on. And I don't even want to know what the track. Because I don't know whether that was just the coded name you got for it, or that's just the title you have for it. But what was the name of the track, and why particularly did you pick out this tune out of all the tunes that you could have sent across? What was particularly about this song that you really wanted playing?
Well, it's called Neme, so you don't pronounce the M. So it's Mneme, Neme,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so the concept. I have one for the new record is the 9 muses from ancient Greek mythology, and that all came about because the first track that I wrote for the album was called The Muse, and it just got me thinking about how, as a creative person, we use muses, and it doesn't necessarily have to be people. It can be the world around you. And particularly for me, a muse at the moment is nature. So I wanted to have initially. That's why the album was going to be 9 tracks, because it was going to reflect each muse. And then I just kept writing. Unfortunately, there are also 3 other muses on a different mount in Greece. So Neme is one of those muses, and she represents memory. And the track, and it's a demo track. It's still not quite finished, but it's a collaboration between. So it's myself, Simon Parton, who's producing the record with me at the moment. He's based in Swansea, and I'm also collaborating with a Scottish singer-songwriter called Rachel Sermanni on this one as well. And there's some French in it too.
Well, Jo, for all of us who are non-educated in our Greek muse history or Greek knowledge, please inform me, what are the 9 muses?
Oh, good grief! I can't pronounce all of them, and I'm going to have to. No, Google it.
Okay, that's exactly the Zen moment of this podcast.
Google it, because I can't remember them. People keep asking me as well, what muse does that song represent? Oh, I don't know. It's all become a mush of muses now. It could represent many of them. Yeah. So there's a few tracks that are actually just named after muses, but a lot of the tracks are. So there's a track that's to do with just a mythological story that I found, like a fairy tale. But so it's based around the idea of the muses, basically. So there we go.
Oh, perfect. We'll finish off that in a minute, but before we, sort of round this podcast up and this conversation up, there's a few kind of things I want to wrap up with you. Is this CD available to people? I mean, if so, and where can they go out and purchase this wonderful CD?
The physical CD, they can purchase on Bandcamp, and I think it's just like laurencemademecry.bandcamp.com. You can find it there, and I prefer, if people are going to buy music from me, to buy it from Bandcamp, because for the most part I see nearly all of the money.
Okay.
They come straight to me, which is nice. But it's on iTunes and stuff as well, if that's what you like. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. That's great stuff. And again, I mean, obviously you've alluded to it, but if people want to reach out to you, they can find you on Twitter at, where can they find you?
LMMC Music. That's my Twitter handle. LMMC Music. Yeah.
Perfect. And the other thing is, I mean, Jo, any time, you're welcome back on this podcast anytime. And I think I definitely want to have you back on when we there's 2 big ones I definitely want to have you back on. When your new album's coming out, we'll fly the flag for that big star. but yeah, I mean, like I say, anytime you want to come back on here and anything you want to fly the flag or just want to drop in, I mean, do you know what I mean? It's nice. It's nice to be speaking, to be honest, Joe. I'm usually speaking to people in Australia. You know, I'm up here at 3:00 in the morning speaking to people.
Yeah.
You know, so
It's a normal time. Yeah.
Exactly. So I can actually kick this podcast and finish off at a reasonable time. So yeah, you're welcome on any time you like, Joe, because it's actually nice to have someone to speak to in a normal time zone. But like I say, we're gonna wrap this up now with the M&A man, and well, like I say, it's been an absolute absolute pleasure and an honour talking to you tonight, Joe. Because
thanks for having me.
No, I say this with all sincerity and all from the bottom of my heart that album has been in one of my top 3 albums of this year, and it's meant a great deal to me. I know it's like everything else. I mean, I speak as an artist, and I know what I'm saying, but to me, and I'm sure you're exactly the same way. But when everyone says to me, "What's your favorite piece of work you've done?" and I always say to them, "The last piece." So, I'm sure it's the same with you. So to hear someone like me going on about something you wrote a while back is like, but I always think it's important because I think we live in a world where because we become so whatever we and I think it's important just to stand up at times and say, Joe, that really inspired me, and it inspired me to do artwork, like I've told you. It's inspired a lot of things outside me, and I wanted to tell that from you to human being, saying, you keep up that work and you're doing it because, as I said, as you've learned from tonight, if nothing else, you've written that, and it's that whole seed up about with somebody you never knew, So I think I have to say to you because it's well done, and I think it means a lot. I say that because I know as an artist, it's the last thing we like hearing. We don't like hearing.
I know taking compliments is just not.
It's not something we like doing, but we need. But hey, I don't give a toss. It's my podcast, and I can be complimentary as I like. so anyway, no worries. Like I say, it's been an absolute pleasure tonight. We're finished with this track, and like I say, Joe, anytime you want to come back, we'll come back on. But from from me in it's a bit kind of clear night down here in Gulp, and from up in Inverness, it's good night and life is people.
In a field of flowers, red and blue, I will wait patiently, pressing down with hope, so heavy laden. My love for you remains strong. In the summertime, I return here still, in this field where I first met you. Our mama says in pages thick, each flower I'll remember. Tu m'as dit, attends-moi, je viens l'an prochain. Tes yeux fixés sur mes mains, la tristesse mêlée à notre joie. Coming back to me, gone so soon. At least I know your heart is safe. In the field of flowers, red and blue, now the seed we planted is growing. Tu m'as dit, attends-moi, je viens l'an prochain. Tes yeux fixés sur mes mains,